Welcome to the San Gorgonio Chapter Trail Talk series. My name is John St. Clair, and I will be your Zoom host tonight for our monthly Trail Talk series. And tonight, our speaker is Rachel Wilkin, and she's going to be talking about hiking on the John Muir Trail. But before we get to the talk, I want to talk about the ground rules. Everybody except the speaker should be muted. And if you have questions during the presentation, we ask that you write your questions in the chat section. At the bottom of your screen, there should be a talking bubble icon you click on with the word chat, and it opens up a chat box, and send your message to everyone and make it a group chat, which is the default, and just write your question there, and before the evening's over, your question will be answered. So after the presentation is over, if you want to unmute yourself and actually talk and ask questions, that's fine. We can have some discussion after the talk is over, but during the talk, everybody needs to stay muted. And I'm going to, at this point, introduce Julianne Anderson. And Julianne is one of the members of the Trail Talk Committee. Myself, Julianne, and Carla Kellums are the committee members. And Julianne does most of the finding of the speakers for us, is her big role. And she also most often will introduce the speaker. So I'm going to take the spotlight off me, and Julianne, you can introduce our speaker.
Thank you, John. Good evening, everyone. What a treat we have in store this evening. John did mention that I do a fair bit of recruiting of our speakers. And I just wanted to quickly highlight the two upcoming. Our own Carla Kellums is going to be speaking next month on the very important topic of recruiting, Outings leadership. We have had such delightful success this year with new Outings leaders like our own Rachel Wilkin, who you will hear from presently, and many others, including Summer Davidson, who's with us, Moises Cisneros, who just led a delightful stargazing up in Joshua Tree last Saturday, and a number of others. So we are wanting to build on this and keep the momentum. So please join us next month on the third Wednesday of the month at 7 p.m. for our own Carla Kellums to talk about that. The December Trail Talk, and John, I don't think I've shared this with you, but I was very excited also to hook up with the city of Riverside's own Erin Edwards. Erin is a newly retired council member, and she has been tasked with the Blue Zones project that the city of Riverside has taken on. They're hoping to pattern healthy living or healthy ways of living, much like the city of Loma Linda and other blue zones around the world. You may have heard of this. Cities in Japan, Italy, Greece, our own Loma Linda, were people who have adopted healthy living habits, exercise, community. And I thought this is just such an opportunity for the Sierra Club to partner with our Outings program, with our sense of community, with our sense of health and nature, and explore, enjoy, protect, which is our motto. So we will be hearing from Erin about the program and how we at the Sierra Club can help. So that being said, I would like very much to introduce our speaker, Rachel Wilkin, who is going to give us a treat this month about her adventures on the John Muir Trail this past summer. Rachel was born and raised in Upland, California, and graduated from the University of Redlands in 2020. During her college career, her involvement in outdoor programs at U of R opened her eyes to a world she was once apprehensive of, the backcountry. She fell in love with backpacking in the Eastern Sierra. I totally agree. One of my favorite places. On the many trips she led for outdoor programs. She currently works as an administrative assistant at Upland High School. Outstanding. Spending most of her free time hiking local trails or in the climbing gym. The John Muir Trail has been a dream 5 years in the making for her, one that is not yet finished. Rachel is a Sierra Club Outings leader and an active Sierra Club volunteer. And we are so delighted to have her with us. I asked her to speak and she didn't even hesitate. So thank you, thank you, thank you for that. With that, take it away, Rachel.
Thank you. Yeah, let me get my presentation up real quick before I forget.
There you go.
Let's
Looking
present.
good.
All right, how's that look for everyone? Look
That's
good?
great. Beautiful.
Sweet. Awesome. Thank you for having me, guys. I'm so excited. As Julianne mentioned, Sierra, the Eastern Sierras specifically are one of my favorite places in the world. So I'm really excited to talk about them today. I am getting over a cold, so I do apologize for my voice, but we'll get through it. So yeah, this summer I decided to hike the John Muir Trail, which has been years in the making for me personally. It's been one of those bucket list trips. And so yeah, so oops, let's do this. There we go. So yeah, if you aren't familiar with the John Muir Trail, here's some quick facts about it. It runs 211 miles through the Sierra Nevadas. The starting point is Yosemite Valley and it ends at the top of Mount Whitney, which is the tallest point in the lower 48. Most people take between 2 and 3 weeks to hike it. It depends on how fast you want to go, and how much time you do want to take. One of the great benefits of this trail is that it follows the PCT. So the PCT, the Pacific Crest Trail, goes from Mexico to Canada. So this section, as you can see on the map on the left here, it pretty much follows the PCT for a majority of the way. And so it is a fairly popular trail. There's lots of people hiking this area on the weekends. So it is pretty, I wouldn't say crowded, but it is, fairly trafficked. About 2,000 people hike the JMT each year. There's two different ways that you can go about it. I chose to do the northbound route. So I started down from the Cottonwood Pass trailhead, which is about 20 miles south of Mount Whitney, aiming to end in Yosemite Valley. And I plan to do 2 resupplies while on this trip. That's what I put these little stars. So Onion Valley was my first resupply, and then my second planned resupply was Muir Trail Ranch, which is the official halfway mark of the trail. It is a very remote trail. A lot of it is at least a day's hike from the nearest town or facility. So it is really important to plan ahead if you are thinking about hiking this trail. Even though I decided to go northbound, there are a lot of people who end up doing the southbound route. It just depends on your personal preference, what you're looking to get out of the trail. For me, the biggest thing was I knew that it was going to be easier to get permits going northbound. So that was the main reason why I decided to do that route. So yeah, it just depends on what you're looking to get out of it. I did have a friend do this exact route a couple years ago. So for me, I felt a lot more comfortable going into it. One of the main cons that, people don't start from south of Mount Whitney is that you're getting the highest elevation and the most amount of passes within, the first week and a half, depending on how fast you're going. So it is just really good to be aware that that's, one thing that I'll talk about a lot tonight is being comfortable with your personal preferences, knowing how fast that you hike and what you're comfortable doing on a day-to-day basis. So for me, that was just something that I knew going into it, was that it was going to be a lot of big miles and a lot of passes on a daily basis for those first couple of weeks. I did decide to do the trail alone. That was the biggest kind of feedback that I got from people when I told them I was doing it. They were, oh, that's so cool. Wait, why are you going alone and stuff? For me, again, personal preference, I tend to do a lot of camping and hiking on my own in my personal life. And so doing this trail by myself, it just felt really comfortable and really natural for me to do it alone. On trail, I did experience that, there was a lot of other, especially female hikers hiking alone. So if it's something that you're thinking about doing by yourself, it's more than doable. The community on trail is really incredible. And so yeah, I would recommend, if you're thinking about doing it alone to really consider it. There was a lot of other people in small groups as well. So just be aware, if you decide to do it in a group, know what people are going to want to hike each day, and know, kind of try to fish out some group dynamics before hitting trails, since you will be spending, the majority of 2 to 3 weeks in the backcountry together. Um, and I do, oh, and then this is just a little, if you have never been to the Sierras or you don't know anything about the John Muir Trail, this is just a couple photos that I took. It is, like I said, one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. Lots of alpine lakes. You go up and down in elevation every day, so you're seeing kind of every part of the mountain. You're seeing the entire alpine ecosystem. And especially, the time I went in mid-July, so wildflowers were blooming. It was a really incredible, incredible place. So this is just to kind of set the scene of where you are. I do want to add a little disclaimer. Unfortunately, I did have to leave the trail early. I decided when I got to Bishop Pass, which was almost halfway, it was about 110 miles in, that I did need to leave the trail. I had had really severe pain in my thigh for about 2 days at that point. I took a full rest day and just decided that even with painkillers, I just wasn't able to do it. And so I did decide to leave. It was the correct decision that I needed to make at the time. I have no, I don't second guess that for a second. It is a huge bummer because, I had been intending on doing the whole trail, but I plan on going back next summer and finishing it. So it's all good. I also, unfortunately, wasn't able to do Mount Whitney. And one thing I'll talk about more later is thunderstorms. There was forecasted thunderstorms the entire day. I was intending on hiking it on day 3. And I just wasn't comfortable risking it, and going up any further in altitude at that point. So I decided to just continue hiking. I was able to take a slower pace because I didn't summit Mount Whitney. And now it's just another reason to go back to the Sierras. So it's all good. So some things that I will be talking about tonight. I just want to go over how I approached this trail, things that I learned, things that went well, things that I would change. These are all things that you can apply to any backpacking, camping, or any through hike trip that you decide to do. Biggest things are going to be how to plan your itinerary, what to do for meal prepping, choosing gear, deciding on navigation, and then some trail specific things like what I experienced with weather and wildlife and how I approached risk management. With my background in outdoor programs at Redlands, this is something that, I've really tried to make at the forefront of how I go about planning these things. And so I think it's just really important to just kind of flesh out all the possibilities, even if it's a smaller trip or if it is a multi-week hike like this one. So getting into it, your itinerary, the, you know, I, as I mentioned, that this trail was, years in the making. So I thought a lot about how long I wanted to take. I ended up planning for about three and a half, no, I would say like it was about 3 weeks, that I was planning to take to do this trip. And so again, it's kind of based on what your preferences are. It's really important to ask yourself, how many miles are you willing to hike in a day? How much elevation are you willing to gain? do have to take into consideration that you're going to be carrying a pack the entire time. So that can really affect the way and like the speed that you're hiking. I did a lot of training beforehand. I tried to get up in altitude as much as I could. And I did do multiple overnight, just single overnight backpacking trips with a pack on just to get more comfortable with feeling the weight while at altitude. And so the most important thing to remember is just, what your preferences are when it comes to these trips. For me, I built my itinerary on planning to hike between 10 and 12 miles a day. I usually don't go over that. It's just in my normal hiking routine. So I didn't want to try to push over the edge. I knew that was a good range to stay in. And I also I tried to gain no more than 3,000 feet of elevation gain in a day. At that point, I'm just not one of those people that can do, the 20-mile crazy days. And that's okay. And that, for, majority of this trip, that worked for me. I was, up until I got the injury, I was on time. So, it really depends on you and the type of hiker that you are. I did end up kind of re kind of renegotiating my itinerary while I was on trail. I did realize once I was on trail that I needed to make sure that I was getting over the passes by noon. And that's something that's kind of specific to this trail. So if you see down here, if you're not sure, what I'm talking about when I say getting over a pass. So you have these peaks when you're hiking, and in the Sierras, the trail was built to go over. Oh, sorry, it's doing this weird thing. Oh, no. It built to go over kind of the lowest point between those two peaks. So these passes are kind of major markers for where you are along the trail. But even when you're saying you're at the lowest point between two peaks, you're still averaging between 10 and 12,000 feet of elevation. So the majority of the elevation gain that you're doing in a day when you're going over these passes is, you're starting at around 10,000 feet, you're going up to 12, and then to camp, you're going back down to 8 or 9. So that's where a majority of your elevation gain and loss comes in. But because these passes are at such a high elevation, you become the tallest point on the pass because because you're above tree line at that point. So it becomes really dangerous when lightning and thunderstorms roll in. So it's really important to make sure that you are over this major landmark before noon. When I was on trail, every day at 2 o'clock on the dot, clouds started rolling through. So for me, it just became I'm getting up at 5 or 6 a.m. and I'm making sure that I'm at camp by 2 or 3. There was other people that waited out the passes until the evening and then went over. But for me, I'm just an early riser, so that's what worked best for me. And then some specific for like the timeline for me, because I was doing it in mid-July, that first week that I was on trail, there's a lot of other PCTers, but as the days went on, it definitely became less because they're on a much stricter timeline than most JMTers are. So that last week that I was hiking, there was a lot more I was coming across a lot more JMTers going the opposite way of me than I was meeting with PCTers and hiking with PCTers going the same way as me. So it's just something good to kind of be aware of if you're someone who really likes the community of trail and you want to be able to kind of fall into groups with people hiking the same pace as you. It might be better to go southbound because, for the entire summer, you're guaranteed to have a good amount of people going the same direction as you. So it's just something to consider. I used all trails when I was building my itinerary. It's got this great little feature that you can follow. You can, kind of toggle this little dot on the trail and figure out where exactly it is. So that's how I kind of chunked out exactly where I was planning on camping each night and then just marking it on my topographic map. And like I said, that changed, but it's just good to kind of wrap your head around where are the major campsites and things like that. And then going into meal prep, another really important part of planning a major trip like this. You're going to be, because you're gaining and losing so much elevation a day, you are burning calories like nobody's business. So for most of the research that I did, you're going to be burning around 4,000 calories a day. Just kind of, depends on how heavy your pack is and things like that. So calories are super important when you are on trail. And it's also really important to make sure that you are packing things that you're going to want and that you're going to enjoy eating on trail. Um, so um, I learned a lot when it came in regards to food. One thing is that, it's really hard to know what you are going to want and what you aren't going to want on trail. So the best thing that I could say is it's just trial and error as many camping trips as you can before doing a big hike like this. Try different things, see what you like, see what you don't like, especially trying things that at altitude, because your hunger is going to change. You're not exactly going to maybe be craving the same thing. For me, it was coffee. My friends and my family know I don't miss a day of my coffee. I have my coffee every single morning. I think I had maybe 2 cups of coffee on this trip. And luckily it was something that, it wasn't a big deal that I was carrying the extra weight of this coffee that I wasn't drinking. It worked out fine. But it was a really good lesson that, like, now I know when I'm in an environment, you wake up, it's really cold, you're moving your body immediately. I just didn't feel like I was needing coffee in the morning. And so now, that's something that I'm going to take into the next long trip that I have, of maybe just putting a couple bags of tea, because it is really nice to have a warm drink at the end of the day. But for me, the caffeine fix, I just didn't need it. And so it's also really good to remember too that your food is not going to look exactly like other hikers. It's really important to kind of pack what you know that you like and stuff. But I think, as much research that you can do of what other people took on trail will give you ideas of things to pack that you'll like. Um, and so another really important thing to remember is that you're getting enough electrolytes. Usually when I'm hiking, I'll only do about half of a liquid IV. And I was doing 1 to 2 liquid IVs while I was on this trail. So it was just another thing that, it was really easy to adjust and kind of figure things out. But because you're losing so many calories and you're sweating so much during the day, salt especially is something that's really important to get back. So if you're someone that's super healthy off trail, and you really, are very strict with what you eat, it might be hard to kind of figure out exactly what you want to take. But for me, I really enjoyed packing things like the Snickers bar, or like the pepperoni packets and stuff like that, because it's getting you the salts, it's getting you the calories. And for me, especially, it was a little pick me up at the end of the day. To be able to have something just sweet and just kind of indulgent after, you're like working your body to its limit every single day. Another important thing to think about is, does it fit in your bear bin? Especially, we'll talk about resupplies in a bit, but for me, when I was figuring out exactly what I was going to take, it was a lot of packing and unpacking your bear bin. You also want to make sure that you have a little bit of room in your bear bin, because for things like toothpaste or medications, other smelly stuff, that you're going to need to fit in there too. So I recommend getting your bear bin early if you don't already have one. I took the Max bear bin, and it worked well for me. I was able to fit everything in there with some extra room. So yeah, that's definitely something that really helps beforehand, to make sure that you don't get on trail and you're trying to figure out campsites where bear boxes are, because you already have everything can fit in your bear bin. So the other important thing to think about too is the altitude is going to affect how hungry you are. It's really important to make sure that you're eating regardless, especially when you're at altitude. For me, starting at the elevation that I didn't get below 9,000 feet for the first couple of days. So it was immediately in a really high altitude. And luckily, I was able to stay at the Onion Valley campground, which is about 9,000 feet for a couple of days before I actually started the trail. That helped a lot in regards to just being acclimated, but I still wasn't getting the same hunger triggers that I usually do when I'm at lower elevation. So it's really important. Make sure that, even if you're not feeling hungry, that you're stopping, you're taking a little bit of rest throughout the day while you're hiking, and you're eating something. You're getting something in yourself. The other big thing that I learned too, I was really, so there's a balance, right? You have like, you want to take things that you're going to enjoy. You want to take things that are going to add, that little mental boost at the end of the day. But I would say try to branch out. And for me, that the biggest thing that I learned in regards to food was taking dehydrated meals, especially for dinner. The I leaned more towards like the chicken pepperoni packets with some kind of carb, like a pasta or a ramen. And it was fine, but the couple of dehydrated meals that I got from REI that I took, I noticed a considerable difference in just my energy levels the next day when I did have those for dinner. And you can just get so many more nutrients in those meals, and you're able to, they come mostly in 2-person sizing. And if you eat that entire thing, it's almost 1,000 calories, which is awesome in the backcountry. So that's something that's going to be an immediate change in my next trip. Just making sure that, I have a couple of those. It doesn't have to be every meal has to be dehydrated, but I really recommend for dinner, something to kind of get back those nutrients at the end of a long day. Then resupplies. So there's a lot of resupply options on trail. The main part where it gets a little tricky is this southern section here. This is, so I started down here by Horseshoe Meadows. Your first resupply in those first about 40 miles is going to be the town of Independence. That is a full day's hike out, including going over a pass. So it is good to just be aware to add in that extra time when you are planning your itinerary. There's a lot of pros and cons to resupplies depending on what you are planning, what you prefer, I would think would say. In the northern section here, Tuolumne Meadows, Red Meadows, and Vermilion Valley resorts have full operating grocery stores. They have a lot more options of things that you can just pick up on trail if you're craving something really specific. Muir Trail Ranch was where I was planning on doing my second resupply. I didn't end up getting there. Those you have to mail in weeks in advance, and there's no store. So the nice thing about all the resupplies is that they have spots where hikers will leave food. So it's just leave what you don't want, take what you do kind of a thing. So that's really great. They have that at Muir Trail Ranch. So if you're feeling super confident about your food and that you're not going to need any supplementary things on trail, Muir Trail Ranch is a great spot. I think if I were to do things differently, I might have tried to do Vermilion Valley just to be able to go into town, get a real meal, eat at a restaurant kind of a thing. So again, know yourself, know what your preferences are. Resupplies are also a great place to take a 0-day. So that was something, in regards to the injury that I had, I think there was a couple of different things that were playing into it. But when I was talking to a ranger, when I started to feel the pain, the first thing she asked me was, when was your last 0 day? When was the last complete rest day where you hiked no miles? And at that point, I had hiked 110 miles straight. I didn't take a 0 day. And I think that was probably the biggest factor going into why I was having this just overuse injury. And so that's something that, if I could do it all over again, I probably would have taken a 0 day when I went into town in Independence. I did mail my resupply box to a motel and I stayed the night there. So that was really nice. But it was a very quick turnaround. I got to the trailhead around 1 or 2. I got a shuttle into town, stayed at the motel. I was back on trail by 8 a.m. the next day. So it was great to have, a place in town to rest, call my friends and family, have cell service again. But you know, maybe things would have been different if I had taken a full 0 day. Independence is also a really great spot as well. If you want to go into Bishop or Lone Pine, which have a lot of really great options. If you need something specific to resupply, there's a lot of shuttles, lots of hitchhiking and stuff that you can do. It's pretty safe up there. So there's a lot of really great options. Other than that, when you get up to Vermilion Valley, it's a little town, but it's kind of isolated. And Red's Meadow, again, it's got its own, little general store and facilities and stuff, but it is a shuttle to get into the town of Mammoth. So you do have to kind of calculate that extra time as well if you decide to do those as resupplies. Yeah. And then gear choices. Sorry, I'm gonna get some tea. So for me, I didn't want to include an entire gear list because I didn't, it can get very specific. It really depends on your preferences and stuff like that. I did want to link this survey that I referred to a lot. It's a blog called Halfway Anywhere. They have submissions from JMT hikers where they ask at least 100 questions for each hiker, all the way from gear choices to meal prep to itinerary, like pretty much everything under the sun. So it's a great resource if you want to know what is the most common gear that JMT hikers have on trail. For me, I would say really important things to have is a tent that, for you is like comfortable and as lightweight as possible. I had a 2-person ultralight backpacking tent that I loved. It was awesome. It was a little bit on the bigger side compared to, the ultralight fad that's going around. But for me, it was really nice to have some extra space in my tent because I would spend my afternoons reading or journaling and stuff. And it was just nice to have a little bit extra space in my tent. The other really important thing to have is good rain gear. So having really good rain jacket and really good rain pants, not only for rain, obviously, but for me, I noticed it was really great for mosquitoes. They can't penetrate for me, it was Gore-Tex that I had. So I could just throw it on at the end of the day, not have to worry about mosquitoes, and it also keeps you really warm. So for me, another thing that I, kind of learned on trail was that it just wasn't as cold. I wasn't as cold as I thought I was going to be. So that, adjusting things and things like that, I probably wouldn't have brought as many layers as I did. It's really good to have like a fleece or a puffy jacket to just add some insulating warmth. But for me, knowing how warm my rain gear kept me, I would probably have left a layer or 2 at home. So again, it's just trial and error. It's hard to know exactly. Some other things that I learned while on trail was just the importance of having backups. So for me, I had a gravity bag water filter, and the little silicone seal that's on it kept popping off. So, it was fine. It wasn't the worst thing ever. I just had to be a little bit more diligent with it when I was using it. But I did have water tablets that I could purify water. My lighters were being finicky too, so I had some backup matches. Just things like that. It's good to have backups of things, because you just never know what's going to break or what's not going to work. And so, even though it is, a little extra weight here, a little extra weight there, for me, I was really glad to have those water tablets more than anything, because it meant that I could continue to purify water. Um, One thing that I didn't have backup for, not the end of the world, but I brought a solar panel to charge. I had my phone and my Garmin with me that needed to be charged. So that was really great, except for on day 3 when my phone charging cord broke. And so, again, not the end of the world. I was still able to communicate with my family through my Garmin. It was fine. But it was kind of annoying. I had a lot of audiobooks downloaded on my phone. I wasn't able to take photos. So things like that, it sucked. Would I have carried 2 phone chargers? I don't think so, but it's just good to think about those things. Okay, like, is this a phone charging cord that I've been using for 3 years and maybe it's on its last leg? Or like maybe I buy the new Amazon one and just have a fresh phone charger so that I don't even have to worry about that. So really try to just, think through all the possibilities. Again, that kind of goes to risk management as well, as like thinking through everything that could possibly go wrong. There will still be things, of course, that are going to happen, and you're just going to have to roll with it and it'll be fine. But it's just good to kind of get yourself in that mindset that something's going to happen, something is going to go wrong that you're not expecting. And then really important, it's just making sure that your pack is as light as it can be for what you want to take. There was definitely a lot of hikers doing the full ultralight. It looked like they just had day packs on, especially, when I was hiking with the PCTers. There's a lot of people who went the full ultralight route, and that's great. For me, I liked having a real tent and not just a tarp. So there's a lot of things that I just wasn't willing to give up comfort on. Maybe the more that I do long backpacks like this, I will get more comfortable with it. But for it being my first major long backpacking trip like this, I just wanted more of those comforts than anything. But because you are carrying everything that you bring every single day, weight is super important. I think the ultralight hikers, they aim between 20-25 pounds. I think I was about 30 pounds, that I believe. So yeah, which is, some people are like, oh my gosh, that's way too heavy. For me, I the way that I had trained and stuff, I don't think that the weight was an extreme problem for me. It was fine. So yeah, again, know yourself, and know what you are going to feel comfortable doing. Navigation. The really great thing about this trail is that it's really hard to get lost, because the PCT is so heavily trafficked. You are, it's very clearly marked where the trail goes. There's a couple of spots where there might be some different conditions, like there might be a bridge out or there might be some down trees, but even then the alternate route is very clearly marked. The really nice thing about it is that because a majority of the PCT hikers are coming in late May, early June, they are kind of forging that path before a lot of the JMTers get there. So when there are things like that, like a down tree or whatever, you aren't necessarily being the one to decide where to go. So that's the really great thing about this trail. I did bring a topo map. I brought my Garmin, like I said. I brought a compass. I didn't end up using it, but for me, it's just been ingrained in all of my training to bring a compass. So it was just something that it just felt weird leaving at home. So again, it can be up to you. I did have all of like the entire trail downloaded offline on my phone through Gaia GPS as well. So that was nice when I didn't want to have to get out my map. And because the Garmin screen is so small, it was just nice to be able to look at my phone, see where I was, see where maybe the next campsite or whatever it was. The thing that I really like about this specific map is that it's very accurate where camping locations are. So that's, a big decision that you're going to be making on a daily basis besides, where's my next water source, but where am I going to be camping tonight? It's very accurately and clearly marked on the map where tent camping is. The other app that I used that was really awesome that a PCT hiker recommended to me was called Far Out. On that app, you actually have to buy the map itself, but it works the same way that a like a Facebook does, is that it has the map, but then there's all these points for camping, points for water, things like that. And people can leave up-to-date comments about the status of the campsite, the status of the water, things like that. So for me, that was really great when it came to the sections of the downed trees. There was a bridge that was out. So that was super, super helpful, especially because you can see when that person went across that specific section of the trail. And what the condition was at that point. Most people are super friendly on trail, so if there's something that you're worried about that you're not sure exactly, what the status might be, you can also just ask. There's a lot of really great conversations that I had that just started with, hey, how high is the river up there? So use the resources around you, but this was kind of the foundation of what I had for navigation. And then, yeah. So weather and wildlife, what I talked about a little bit earlier, thunderstorms are not an if, but a when. So it's just really important to be aware of when they're going to be rolling in. For me, the thing that I really, really liked about the Garmin InReach is that you're able, I upgraded my subscription to the highest one. So I was able to text people unlimited as much as I wanted to. And the other thing was weather forecasting. So I could request as many weather forecasts as I wanted. So every morning I would just update it, figure out when the storm is going to be rolling in. And that was super helpful to know just kind of if I needed to, if I could maybe take a slower day or if I needed to kind of hurry up and make sure that I was getting over a pass or whatever it may be. There was a couple thunderstorms, including the one that rolled through the Mount Whitney area when I was in it, where I ended up being in lightning position. So I just have it here. It's just good, to know. I do recommend having, some sort of, first aid training if you're going to do a long backpacking trip like this. But it was, it's something also that's like really easy to learn, and just to kind of have in your back pocket. Basically, you just want to make sure that if lightning is close enough to you that you're in a position that if it strikes the ground 100 yards away or whatever and you're getting currents, that you're protecting your spine and your head. So there's a couple of moments where it just felt too close for comfort and I just decided to hang out in lightning position for a bit. So it is, it's something you just get used to. They're usually pretty intense but pretty quick storms, so they tend to just do their thing and roll out. So it's just good to know too if you're hiking at altitude anywhere. Wildlife, I didn't see a ton. I think I was expecting a little bit more than what I saw. The thing is that because I was starting at such a high altitude during that time of year, a lot of like the bears and the deer and like the cool, wildlife. I don't want to say cool, but it's kind of like the more exciting wildlife that you see. They're hanging out at lower elevations. So most of the bear sightings and things like that were being reported from about 8,000 feet of elevation. So it bears, it's really important to make sure that you're keeping everything that smells in your bear bin. You're being cognizant of your campsite and where you're putting things and things like that. I wish I took a picture of it because I think it's one of the funniest things that I saw. But when I was at the Debt Meadow, which is about 8,000 feet of elevation, it's just south of Kearsarge Pass. There was these signs from the ranger station that said, if you see a bear, scream and run at it like you were trying to eat it, which just makes me laugh because it is like the opposite of everything that anyone ever tells you to be bear aware. But the bears in the Sierras, they're very accustomed to people. They know where, because this trail is so heavily trafficked in such a specific location, they know where people are during the summer. And so I think that there's this kind of, they're not really scared to like wander through camp, but because they're black bears, they're not as aggressive, and they're, they don't, you're not at the risk of a bear charging you. And usually when they see people, they go along their way. So it's just funny. I definitely don't know if I would scream and run at a bear if I saw one. But it's just, kind of good to know that like those local bears are more inclined to be scared of humans than bears in other areas are. Another thing that was super common were the marmots. They're super cute. They're just these, cute, and they hang out up at the I don't, they're kind of everywhere, but I saw them most above 10,000 feet. They really like these little fjord mossy swamp areas that are just below passes. I had heard stories that they do like to snag food from campsites. I didn't have any problems with them, but I think in this specific region, you're more likely to encounter an issue with a marmot, a squirrel, a chipmunk than you are necessarily with a bear. The other thing that I did want to note, especially I'm not sure necessarily about the northern section, but the southern section from the Mount Whitney to Bishop area, there's lots of mule packs. So it's really important to just be courteous to these packs as they go along. They do have the right of way, and they prefer that you do step off trail. So it's not something that I came across in any of the research that I did beforehand, but was just something that, I stepped off trail a little bit at one time when I saw them, and the leader of the pack just asked if I could just take a step back a little bit further. And from there, I was a good, 5 feet off the trail afterwards. So something to be aware of, and just kind of know for like local conditions. And then risk management. So again, this is a place where you just want to make sure to know yourself best. For me, once I got injured, I started talking to a lot of hikers specifically about injuries. And I think it's just something that is just so common. And, they come in a lot of different forms, from like sunburns and blisters to broken ankles was one of the stories that I heard. So it's hard to know exactly what kind of injury you may or may not get. Some people do this trail and are completely fine. But it's just something to be aware of. And so, like I said, training as much as possible, training at, high altitude with steep trails is going to be really great. For me, something that I tried to do almost every day was stretching at the end of the day and either swimming in the lake or the river that was nearby. For me, I found that being in really cold water really helped my sore muscles. So just trying to limit as much as you can injuries. It also goes into just making sure that you're not pushing your limits every single day. If you need to go slower than you initially anticipated, that's what you need to do. I met a woman who had to take a couple of days off trail because she had altitude sickness and she needed to just sit. She just needed to stay and acclimate, and then continued hiking, and hadn't had a problem since. So there's just a lot of things to be, aware of. Just to really make sure that you're trying to do as much preventative care as you can. One thing to know too is, because this trail is so remote, knowing what your points to bail are. So for me, I had kind of marked on my topo map where all the passes that led to towns were, in case something happened, which made it really easy when I decided to exit out of Bishop Pass. I knew exactly where I was going to be ending up. It was really easy to tell. My mom was the one who came and picked me up. Shout out Mama Wilkin. So it was really easy for me to tell her exactly where I was gonna end up, so that there was no question of where I was gonna be be leaving the trail. So there are a good amount of options. There's a couple of parts of this trail that you don't necessarily have the option to hike out for a couple of days. So it's just something to be aware of. But for the most part, you're about a day to a day and a half, 2 days hike out at most parts. The section when you get up towards Mammoth and Yosemite, there's a lot more options for you. But it's good to know when you're in the Bishop to Lone Pine section that it's just not going to be as many options for you. And then, like I said earlier, knowing your logistics, so knowing what conditions are current for the trail, and talking to people was a really great way to figure out kind of things that had maybe changed or weren't updated, that I needed to be aware of when hiking. And then some glows and grows, things that went well. Like I said, my hiking pace, I was able to maintain that 10 to 12 mile range for the entire portion of my hike. Overall preparation, I feel like was really solid. I really had a good expectation of what I was going into. So I think, over preparing is always going to be a benefit to you when you're doing long trips like this, just kind of knowing what the conditions are, things like that. Self-care is really important, while you're on trail. For me, I was journaling every night, treating myself to like a little snack or something nice at the end of the day, like having moments where you can just kind of soak it all in, really enjoy the trip is super important too. It can be as simple as having a conversation with someone at camp. So I think that really helped my mental state when I was on trail. It definitely was an adjustment being alone. But I think, having kind of those things in place to check in with myself, make sure that I was doing okay, really benefited in the long run. Some things that I didn't mention about gear that, maybe I would change moving forward was I went the trail runner route. I know there's like this big spectrum between people who are doing traditional hiking boots and who are doing the super ultralight trail runners. I decided to do trail runners. I've been hiking in trail runners for about 2 years now, so it's something that I've been really comfortable doing. The rocks and the water crossings destroyed them. So even after the 11 days that I was on trail, the sole was almost completely gone of my trail runners. So I'm going to do some research moving forward. We're going to figure out some other options. I don't necessarily like the traditional hiking boot route, but again, it's something that, it works really well when I'm just doing my day hikes in my personal life that I had no idea was going to be kind of this issue that would spring up while on trail. So you live and you learn, you figure it out. So it's just something that I'll think about a lot for this next trip. Another really great thing that I learned from a PCT hiker was to make sure to sit and eat lunch. So I was kind of doing the snacking lunches and I was just stopping, refilling water and just eating a bar or doing whatever. I met this PCT hiker who said, it really makes a difference if you stop, you eat a full meal and you rest for about 30 minutes. He's like, your legs will just be able to recover so much quicker if you give them the rest that they need. So, and that can be in a lot of different forms, that could, be deciding to take a shorter day or whatever it may be if you're feeling a little bit more fatigued. So, but for me, once I started, from then on, I was really consistent about doing the 30-minute lunches and it really helped. It, allows you to recover, but it also allows you to just sit and enjoy the place that you're in, which is a really great thing as well. And then I would just work on getting my pack lighter. There's some things about the ultralight trend that, I'm a little bit wary towards, but, I think that if I can get my pack a little bit lighter too, that will probably help with injury prevention and just being able to move a little bit quicker on trail as well. So yeah, that was my experience on the John Muir Trail, and I look forward to answering some questions.
Oh, wow, Rachel, what an outstanding presentation.
Thanks.
Just outstanding. Before I get into the questions, I'm just so impressed with your level of prep, your forethought, just the range of your preparations and your learning from your experience. I'd like to invite you to think about leading some short hikes, both local backpacks, both locally and maybe in some short chunks of the JMT.
Yeah.
But obviously, this is something to
Yeah.
think about and something for us to
Yeah.
discuss. But
Great.
what an outstanding trip and presentation. Let
Thanks.
me go through some of the questions. Um, List the pros and cons of hiking the JMT solo.
Ooh. Pros, I think you really, I mean, it's a great place if you want to like think through some stuff in your personal life, if you really want to like, you know, maybe you're at a certain point in your life where things are changing and things like that. For me, it was a really great place to just be able to stop, think about my priorities, think about my life, think about what I want in my life, what I don't want in my life, things like that. It's really great to just be able to like be out there and just self-reflect with no distractions. Um, it's it is hard. I'm not gonna like sugarcoat it that, oh, I had no problems being out there by myself. The first couple of days were, I think, the hardest. And there was just this I had a hard time with my body and my brain syncing. So my body was feeling really good on trail. I had acclimated to the altitude fine. I was hiking at a good pace. But my brain was like, what are we doing? It was a little like, why are we out here alone? And I think that's just like the fight or flight when you're doing something that's out of your comfort zone. And for me, a great lesson from this trip was get out of your comfort zone more. I think that I don't do that enough in my day-to-day. And so I think especially, doing it alone can really help you just like get more comfortable with the uncomfortable in your life.
Outstanding. Okay, next question. Um, your safety planning about possible injury. How did that work out? What kind of safety planning did you do other than looking for the exit route? Did you map out hospitals, clinics? What were you thinking in terms of your physical injury prep?
Yeah, I didn't map out exactly where hospitals were for each point. Um, for the most part, I was kind of thinking like, okay, either I'm gonna have an injury where someone's just gonna come pick me up. My parents were a 4 or 5 hour drive away, and they, were very much like, you let us know at any point, we'll come get you, which I know was not everyone's experience on this trail. So, if you are coming in from a further location, you don't have someone to pick you up, that might be something that could be very beneficial to know beforehand. Like I said as well, the hitchhiking is very popular in this region, and it's not as, I think, scary or dangerous as people think it is. People are just happy to give you a ride to and from trailheads. So if you're injured but not to a point where you need to evac, because that's what it really comes about, is like, are you able to hike out or do you need immediate evac? And if you need immediate evac, I think if you're alone, finding someone else to communicate that with, pushing the SOS on your Garmin, talking to a ranger, like, that's immediate. Like, you need to communicate that with other people. But then really most everything else is, okay, how do we get out and can we hike out? And from there too, even when I was hiking out, when I had a plan and, I knew exactly where I was going to meet, my parent, I still had people asking, oh, because it wasn't a trail that a lot of backpackers were going up and down. It was a lot of day hikers. So a lot of people were asking like, oh, like, where are you coming from? That kind of a thing. And the second I told them that I was injured, they said, do you need anything? Can we help in any way? People are so willing to put themselves, in any form of help that they can for you. So I think that, I could definitely have known exactly where a hospital was or things like that, but I think that it is an environment where you have a lot of resources, and that if you don't do that beforehand, things can still work out okay.
Next one. Talk more about your physical training this spring and last winter in prep for
Yeah,
the.
yeah. Shout out to all of the Sierra Club people that I hiked with beforehand. Specifically Connie, she's another outings leader that's based here in Upland. Her and I did a lot of afternoon hikes up in Baldy to help prepare. For me, I started about 5, 6 months I was just going to the gym as many days a week that I could, just trying to get in like a really good baseline. And so this was January to February of this year. And then as March came along, hiking season started to open up in our local mountains. That was when I just started spending almost every weekend that I could up hiking as much as I could. I think I maxed out around like 3 hikes a week. I was, doing 2 afternoon hikes either in Baldy or like Potato Mountain was another really great one. And then doing like a big 10-mile hike on the weekend. Just because I mean, one of the things that I learned while I was in outdoor programs at Redlands was one of the things our administrator said was the best way to get better at walking uphill is to walk uphill. And so that's just something that has stuck with me is that, yes, you can go to the gym and do the Stairmaster and stuff, but really like getting your body used to walking on uneven, steep terrain. Best way to do it is just do as much of it as you can. Specific hikes that I really enjoyed. I did an overnight hiking up to Sanji. I think that was the best training hike that I did. It gets you pretty close to what you'll experience in the Sierras. And it's a beautiful hike and it's pretty good to what an average day on the JMT looks like as well.
When did you do that? Was it right before your JMT?
Yeah, that was the third week of June, I think was when I did that hike. Yeah.
Next question. What's the etiquette among trail community? I mean, do people, is there an etiquette among the trail
Yeah,
hikers?
I mean, most people are like etiquette in like
Do people expect you to approach their group? Do they, what are the expectations of, do people want solitude or and privacy, or do they expect
yeah,
people to come up and join them for a
I
while
think
or talk?
it really depends on the group. For me, I think I just kind of got a little bit more comfortable with gauging if people were interested in having a conversation or not. Um, with a lot of the people going the opposite way of me, a lot of the times it was very easy to tell, like they're on a timeline, like they're hiking, they're good. But the second someone said, "How's your day going?" I stopped and I was intentional while making a conversation with that person. And that was more for me. I noticed that that really helps my mental health doing it alone, was just to have these little micro 5-minute conversations, were just a game changer for me in my like just mental well-being for the day. So even if the person that I was talking to said the same thing that a person, that there was, oh, the water's a little bit high at this river that you're heading towards. Even if I already knew that, it's just really nice to have those conversations and stuff. And, people are, I was blown away by how kind people were on this trail and how willing they were to help, and maybe it was because I'm like, a single woman by myself. So, they're like, oh my gosh, like, if something was wrong, like the second I was talking about my injury or whatever, there was a night that I had to ask to borrow a lighter and stuff, and the guy just gave me his extra lighter. So it was just a lot of little things that I was just kind of blown away that people were just so adamant to help. And it made me want to help as many people as I could, and to really just kind of invest in the community and stuff. And that's something that I've experienced. I have this really stark memory. My friend and I were hiking Kearsarge Pass, which is Onion Valley. Uh, the summer after COVID, I think it was summer of 2021. And so, at this point, like people were still very wary about masks and things like that. Almost every person that we came along the trail would put a mask on when they were coming across another person, and then they would take it off when they were alone again. And I think that that just speaks to not only the community in this specific region, but I think a lot of the backpacking communities, that people are constantly looking out for others, and they're constantly willing to make sure that other people are okay. So yeah, I was blown away by the kindness that I saw from other hikers. I didn't have any issues with people being rude or anything. It's just very easy to tell if they're not interested in having a conversation, and then you just keep going along your way, you know. So
Did you ever feel unsafe at any time?
um no, the only time I felt like unsafe was when the thunderstorms were kind of rolling through, just because it kind of, you get this very like your what's the word I'm looking for? Like your instincts, this it's like this fight or flight mode of, "Ooh, I shouldn't be here right now. This feels really unsafe." Um, but because, I didn't run across any bears or anything, and the people that I came into contact with, were all very kind. So, no, there wasn't a point that I felt like unsafe in regards to like other people or things like that on trail.
Next question. Why are there more southbound hikers than northbound hikers?
I think the main thing is that it's the it's like the technical correct way to do the trail. The trail technically starts from Yosemite Valley, ends in Mount Whitney. So it's what a lot of people decide to do. It's like the main way to, get permits and stuff. I think the big reason too is that you're kind of easing into the elevation, you're easing into the major passes. You only have a couple of passes within that first week, and they're all about 10,000, 10,500 feet. So you're not having these huge gains and losses as much as you are in the southern part of this trail. So I think that's the main reason, I think, why a lot of people do it, is because you don't necessarily have to train as much, because you're training while you're on trail, because it's like this steady increase of difficulty in the way that the trail is made up. So, but for me, I really wanted to end in Yosemite Valley too. I was like, why would I end in on Mount Whitney when I could end in Yosemite Valley? So that was a big part for me too.
Sure,
So
sure. Next year. And,
yeah.
talk more about mapping out your campsites and what were your fallbacks and how did you approach that?
Yeah, because the trail is so busy, there's lots of campgrounds pretty much everywhere. There's a couple of sections where you just have to kind of be cognizant that, like, if you don't camp there specifically, then you might have to go a couple more miles. For me, once I like those first couple of days, once I really started to adjust for passes, because and maybe I'll go, if I can just go back to this so people know what I'm talking about. So this section here, from Mount Whitney, well, pretty much from Kearsarge to Muir Trail Ranch, this section here, you're basically going over a pass a day. And so for me, it became about making sure that I was getting to a campsite that was as close to a base of a pass as possible. That way I would get the hardest part over the next morning, and then I wouldn't have to worry about thunderstorms, because I was just hiking to the base of the next pass for the rest of the day. So that's mostly, for the part that I ended up doing, was kind of like the major thing that I was thinking about. Most of the campsites are pretty good. They're pretty much always by a really reliable water source. And a good amount of them too, if you're really concerned about making sure that there's other people around you, seeing they have these little icons on the map for where there are bear boxes. A lot, especially the PCT hikers, they tend to hang out and camp where the bear boxes are, so that they don't have to necessarily worry about having everything in their bear bin, because they tend to pack a lot lighter, a lot, everything is more condensed for them. So that's something that I noticed. For me, it wasn't like a make or break, I have to camp at a bear box, but it's definitely where people tend to congregate for camping. So if you're really social, you want a lot of people to talk to, that's a really good way to figure out where to camp.
Okay. Um, Talk more about electrolytes. What are some of the major choices? What were your backups? What did you find worked best for you?
Yeah, I really like the liquid IVs. I like them because they have a combination of sugar and salt. I know that's a reason why some people don't like them. There's another really popular brand called Element that are it's just salt and a flavor, that I know a lot of people that I saw a lot of people on trail take. Um, so it just depends on like your preference and stuff. Sugar is the quickest thing that your body burns when you're exercising. So if you need like a pick me up until like, kind of get some extra energy throughout the day, I think having an electrolyte powder that has more than just salts in it is a good option. But yeah, I think it's just for me too, I can't drink an entire packet, an entire water bottle, so I ended up just kind of like rationing it out throughout the day. Um so yeah, they're pretty, it depends if you're like gonna buy them in bulk or not, but I really recommend, even at REI and stuff, you can get singles of a bunch of different brands. So just test them out, see what you like. I don't know necessarily if there's a certain like amount of salts in certain ones that are better. But for me, I just drink the liquid IVs. That's just what I know that I prefer.
And a personal favorite. How many sneakers did you pack?
How many what?
Snickers
Snickers?
bars. Yeah.
Um, I brought, I think because I was doing like 6 days before a resupply, I think I brought like 3 or 4. I didn't have
Yeah,
one a day.
because
Had
they're
some other
heavy.
stuff,
They're big.
Yeah. Yeah, but I definitely tried to pack at least a couple and stuff. There was too like those, like these are really big in the hiking community too. I learned that the honey buns, I think they might be Hostess. There's a certain brand of honey buns that are like 500-600 calories. Like it's ridiculous how many calories they have, but they're so good. They're like a little like cinnamony donut thing. I had a couple of those too that I got at the gas station that were really good.
Thanks so much. Yeah. Um, okay. We've already talked about boots. What kind of shuttle did you take and how did you make arrangements kind of in the south of Bishop? I know there's a lot
Yeah.
up by Mammoth and whatnot, but what
Mhm.
are the arrangements found by Bishop in that area?
Yeah. There's a lot of the options that I know of are you have to pre-book them. So with the motel that I stayed at in Independence, it was an option. You could just pay more and they would send their own shuttle up and down. Um, there's this guy, he's called Lone Pine Kirk. And I had the pleasure of meeting him as well. He's kind of infamous up in this region. That's his day job. He literally picks up hikers from trailheads and shuttles them, and then he'll just charge for, a flat rate for a resupply up to Bishop and stuff. And he's someone that you can just call and just say, hey, like I need to be picked up tomorrow and stuff. Like, can you take me to Bishop kind of a thing? So there's a couple people like that. And those you can kind of find on like PCTJM on like the resupply, like the Reddit pages, or I saw them on the Far Out app too, like the social media one that I was talking about earlier. So there's a couple different ways to find specific people that do that. It can get kind of pricey, they'll charge like $50 just to take you down the mountain. But if you really want to like eat real meal at a restaurant that evening, it can be kind of worth it. So again, it just depends on, for me, I was more than willing to splurge on a motel for the night to have a bed and a hot shower after that first week. So But I, for at least for what my plan was, I hadn't planned on doing anything else like that. My other resupply was just going to be a picking up a box kind of a thing. So, yeah, just depends on what you're willing to spend.
And by the way, what was the hotel that you found to be good in Independence? Because it's not that big of a town.
Yeah, it was super cute. It's called Mount Williamson Base Camp, and they have this whole program now of specifically for through hikers. So they have like these resupply options that you can add on. They'll do your laundry for you. They had this really great homemade breakfast in the morning, and then the shuttle option too. So. And that you get like your own, it's like these little mini cabin kind of a thing. So it was really cute. I really enjoyed my stay there.
Cool, cool. Um, Talk more about the Garmin and the Gaia.
Yeah. So the Garmin is really great. What I mostly used it for was to send my location to friends and family. You can connect it via Bluetooth to your phone. So I was able, because I had paid for the unlimited subscription, I was able to type my customized text to my family, which I really enjoyed on this trip because I could tell them, if I had a good day, bad day, something that was funny, something that I really enjoyed. It was nice to just have that like open communication, rather than just sending like a preset message. It was really great it was super accurate with the weather predictions as well. I really enjoyed that. And it also, I didn't use it, but you can track your journey as well. So it'll basically, if you keep your Garmin on and set it up for tracking, it'll basically ping every 30 minutes to an hour, whatever you have it set up for. And people can, so I know a lot of people who do the PCT do this as well, where you can people can see where you are, every couple of hours or whatever, because you can send them this link that will show your tracking and things like that. So that's really cool. I didn't end up using it for that. One thing that I didn't mention was it's really hard. It takes a long time to send messages in your Garmin when you're under tree cover. So wasn't a problem up until I'd say like 4 or 5 days before I ended up bailing, because I was at really high elevation most of the time and I was above tree line. So messages were sending super quick. I didn't have a problem. But once you get under some dense tree cover, it takes a long time to send messages. So it's good to just kind of be aware of that. Especially, if you're in a bad situation or like maybe you're deciding to leave or whatever. Sending out pertinent information can take a lot longer if you're at lower elevation as well.
How much longer?
It can take an hour at some points. When I was up at elevation, sending messages would take between 1 and 5 minutes most of the time. Just very quick. And then because usually I would send a message that I got to camp with my location at the end of the day, to my parents. And so those messages when I was under tree cover were taking upwards of an hour to send at some points, which, you go through your battery a lot quicker. You have to think about charging and stuff. So there's just a lot more to think about when you are using it at those lower elevations and stuff. And that was something I think, coming back, it's really good to communicate that too with the people that you're trying to communicate with like at home, because my parents were a little bit like, why is it taking so long? Like, why haven't we heard from her and stuff? And it really is just because there are certain points where, especially if there's a lot of, if you're kind of surrounded by mountains on all sides, the satellite has to come over the mountains, and then it also has to be in a spot that it can get through tree lines. So there are just points that it takes longer. It's good to communicate that with people at home too, to just say there might be times where it takes longer for you to hear from me.
Very good to know. What did you do where the bridge was out?
Um, that I was able to cross. downstream just a little bit. Um, it ended up being like at my like knees. I'm pretty tall, I'm 5'11", so for me it ended up being okay. I was honestly just walking through a lot of the rivers too, so I was used to being my feet being wet. Again, personal preference. Um, I just didn't want to risk falling off a log. Honestly, that to me seemed a little bit more risky. You can risk getting gear wet, you can risk injuring yourself. There's just other things to think about. Whereas I was like, okay, hiking poles and me just walking through this river is okay. So for me, it wasn't there was like a major bridge that was out just north of me that I didn't end up crossing. And that one I heard people were saying it was about waist deep. So, but the ones that there was just this small bridge that was out, and that one was about knee height for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you in terms of the shallow wading. I'd rather just keep my boots on, but it is personal preference. Some people just don't like that wet feeling. Um, were your pictures all taken with the phone, or do you have a camera, and were they edited with just your phone software, or was something more? They are strikingly beautiful.
Oh, thank you. That's so nice. No, it's just my iPhone. I have an iPhone 13, I think. Um, I did edit some of them like on the Photos app, but I didn't take like a real camera or anything. I took a little film camera, but I haven't gone through the roll yet, so I haven't developed those, which is sad because it's October, but it's fine. Um, so, but yeah, it was just all the photos that I took were that I've shown tonight at least were on my phone and just edited in the Photos app. So, it's just such a beautiful place. It's, clear skies and sunny most of the time, so it's just really great for so it's yeah, it's just really really great for taking photos too.
Talk about your phone recharging and solar panel routine daily.
Yeah, most of the time, I had carabiners on my solar panel, so I just strapped it to the top of my pack and just kept either my phone or my Garmin, just in the front pocket charging. It's, I did start to learn once started to get to the lower elevation those last couple of days is that you don't get as much direct sunlight because you're under trees. And, if it's really cloudy in the morning, you don't get as good of charging times. So it's just something to kind of be aware of. I was able to, once the storms rolled through, for the most part, it got sunny again. It was sunny until about 7 or 8 o'clock at night. So, I just, for the most part, I would just try to charge when I got to camp if it was really cloudy in the morning and I knew it wasn't going to clear out. So, um, but the Garmin, the battery lasts, a really long time, especially when you're not, I didn't have it on if I wasn't texting someone. So battery life is super great on the Garmin, and the only thing I was using my phone for was to take photos and to listen to audiobooks. So I could get like 2.5 days out of my phone being fully charged, depending on how much I was using it or listening to things.
How long did it take you to charge in full sunlight to charge your phone?
If I was leaving it, if it was fully dead, I think the specs on the one that I bought said that it takes like 7 hours of full sunlight from a completely dead device. But usually, when I was charging it, I would just usually try to charge it 2 hours, get the battery up as much as I could. I wasn't getting it to a full charge every time that I was charging it. It was mostly just like when I could fit it into the day and when there was really good sunlight.
Got it. Got it. What kind of sleeping bag did you use?
I had a Nemo 15-degree bag. It was probably a little bit warmer than I needed. Most of the time I just slept in shorts and a t-shirt. But it's the only sleeping bag I have, and I just didn't want to buy another one before the trip. But it was great. I love the sleeping bag to death. I highly recommend Nemo and Big Agnes. I had a Big Agnes tent. And those are really two solid pieces of gear that I will repurchase from, other things from those brands. I just find them really reliable.
I've got a big Agnes. How much does your weigh? Does your tent weigh?
My tent, it was a pound and a half, I think.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I bought that last winter. So it's like the new ultralight that I splurged on that one. So that
Yeah.
was like one of my big purchases.
No, I'm with you on Big Agnes. Outstanding. Um, this is from Christina. Rachel, that was such an excellent presentation. I will be sure to have my sons watch the recorded version.
Oh, nice. Awesome. Thank you, Christina.
Um, Suggestions just offhand for like 2 to 3 day chunks that we can turn into outings.
Ooh. Um, 2 to 3 day chunks. Let's see. Um, Kearsarge is definitely a really great starting point. That's where, most of the hiking that I had done before this had been entering from Kearsarge.
Is that out of Big Pine or Independence?
Independence.
Okay.
So you could do like Kearsarge down. I mean, it'd be a big for 2 days. Like you could get to Forester Pass in a day and a half from, which is just south of Kearsarge. That was my favorite section of this trail. I didn't mention that. Forester Pass is awesome. It's just so cool because I think it's just one of those like the starkest image of the entire alpine ecosystem because you're starting at one of the highest points on the trail, and then you're going down, and most of the camping is at like 8,000 to 9,000 feet. So it's a big day in regards to elevation gain and loss. But you have these really cool fjords and all these you see where the snow is coming off, and then the lakes that it's forming, then the rivers, and then you have this raging river that they call a creek, that's down by the Debt Meadow. That was the best day that I had. Like that was just an insanely beautiful day. Um, I think I was honestly really impressed with Bishop Pass too. There's a lot of just overnight people. A lot of people were doing the South Lake to North Lake loop, which I don't know exactly how long that is. But even just doing like Bishop Pass, camping, like, leaving all your gear at camp and then going and doing um like Mirror Pass and coming back down and then hiking out the next day, I think would be a really good option. Um, yeah, like that's a really beautiful area. It's hard once you get above Glen Pass, so like you have like Kearsarge about here, you have like 5 days of passes with no exit points really. So you have Glen Pass, Mather Pass, Pinchot, and there's one other I can't remember. And then you have Mirror Pass. Um, maybe that is all of them. And between that, there's not really an exit point there. So you could either enter from Kearsarge or Bishop and then hike to a pass. But those are kind of the main entrance points. But yeah, those would be really, really great trips too.
We'll discuss, but because
Yeah,
between you and I think Dave is still with us, and
yeah.
Connie Burleson, Lisa Sanford, Denise Allen. We've got some folk that might really enjoy doing a Thursday through Sunday or Thursday through Monday kind of a.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
I'd
for
love.
those of us that are working, that kind of helps keep the vacation day usage
Yeah.
at bay, you know.
Yeah, that's fair.
Um, okay,
One more
so
question. One more question.
okay.
Did you meet any out-of-state hikers or Europeans?
Oh, so many British people. I was like, did I miss the memo? Like, why are there so many people from the UK here? I don't know. I think it was just one of those, it's just one of those trails and areas that I think a lot of there was a lot of Germans too. And so I think, you
Germans.
know,
Well, I
coming
saw
from
on the camping
yeah,
trip in July, full of
yeah.
Germans.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's just one of those areas that a lot of people from Europe are drawn to because you get, similar hiking to like the Alps and things like that. Um, and so, but yeah, it was funny how many British people I met. And too, like I think there was one German guy that I did talk to. He really liked that there's a lot of different there's only a couple like entry exit points, but there's a lot of different trails, especially down by Mount Whitney, that you can start and end in the same place, but like the way that you get there is different. So there's this area called New Army Pass that is not very highly trafficked, but the guy who I was talking to, he said that he loves it because of that, because you're getting the same kind of landscape that you are in other parts of the Sierras. But he was like, it was just nice to not see anyone all day. And I was like, okay, that's not that's not what I'm here for, but it's fine. So yeah, I think there's a lot of different it can kind of appeal to any type of hiker. And there's so many different trails that I want to go back and do in this area specifically, or that I would do again, because I just had no idea. It's just, once you get over the pass, that line of passes, um, that you see from 395, once you get over that, it just seems like the whole Sierras open up to you. So, yeah, it's really cool.
Well, we'll take John's hint, but Rachel, you are such a fount of information, just splendid. I think you've got all of us thinking
Yeah.
about all the different kinds of outings we can do here, short and long, ranges of difficulty. This is just such food for thought. I loved it. What a
Yeah,
wonderful.
I'm so glad. Yeah, I did tell John before this, I was like, I'm really gonna try to not make this a 2-hour conversation, because
No, but it's just
it's just
so
one of those things
fascinating.
that I could talk about for forever. So I really appreciate having the space to do that.
And
Well, and the
lots
fact that we
and
had so many
lots of
questions.
lots and lots of positive comments from people.
Good, good.
So I think I'm going to stop the recording at this point. If I can find the thing to do it.